Did you know that the annual cost for search and rescue in the national parks is $5 million? Beyond that, did you know that the Coast Guard can spend over $600 million a year for search and rescue efforts? And that's not even talking about local police and law enforcement when it comes to search and rescue. With a good basic survival kit that you keep in your backpack or your car, you can stay alive and not become a statistic. In this video, I want to show you a survival kit that with some basic skills will keep you alive in an emergency situation. Let's jump into it. So any good survival kit is going to address the whole person, your body, your mind, your soul, your emotions. So keep that in mind as you put a survival kit together. So any good survival kit has to have good tools, and a survival knife is one of those. This is the Arbor from Olive Knives. This is a fixed blade knife, meaning it's one full piece of metal as opposed to a folding knife. And most people would agree having a solid fixed blade is a basic for a survival kit. One thing to remember is you might think that a knife or a machete or whatever tool you have is great, but if it's too big and too heavy to carry so you leave it home, it's not going to do any good. So this one for me, I can carry this all the time. It's not super heavy, just under a 5-inch blade, very durable Elmax steel. And for all these items, if you're interested, I'll put links down in the description section on this video. But having a good, strong knife is a huge deal in a survival situation and when you're building a survival kit. This one's going to be on the more expensive end, but you can get a good knife like an Ontario Knife Company fixed blade for less than $100, and having that solid knife gives you a huge advantage in a survival situation. Now, another tool that's great to have in a survival kit is a multi-tool. Again, think about weight and also the tools that are included with it, because sometimes they include tools that you're just not going to use if you are actually in a survival situation. And as you can see, we've got pliers, we've got wire cutters, we have a saw, we have a blade that's replaceable. We also have in this one, which I like a lot, a pair of scissors. And you'd be surprised when you're out in the woods, if you're trying to use some of the gear that you have and you need to cut at a specific angle or whatever it is, how helpful a pair of scissors is. In addition to that, it's got a bunch of tools inside, which I'll show you right now. Flathead and Phillips head screwdriver, you have a strap cutter, you have a bottle opener, you have a can opener. You can use these to pry if you had to in a specific situation, but a good multi-tool is a great thing to have. And remember, consider the weight. If it's too heavy, you're probably not going to bring it with you. And then when you get in a survival situation, you don't have the tool that you were hoping you would have. Now, I would say this one is above and beyond, but if you have space in your kit, having a small hatchet is great. You can use this more effectively than your knife to process large amounts of wood. And also you've got now something you can hammer with on the back. This is a tool that you can use in a lot of different ways. This is from Beavercraft, a great little hatchet. I wouldn't spend a ton of money on a hatchet. I would invest in other things first, but if you have space for it, a hatchet can be a great additional tool for your survival kit. Certainly weight is going to be something you need to consider with this thing. Got to take care of your hydration when you're out in a survival situation. That rhymed even though I didn't mean it to. And Grail makes a great option for that. So this is the Grail system with a titanium outside container. The great thing about that is that this is a single wall container that you could put in a fire if you want to boil some water or you need to cook something. You can use this. A double walled container. People talk about those exploding, but spoiler alert, they're probably not going to explode. They're probably just going to break at a seam and then not work as well. So single wall container, definitely better. The great thing about Grail is that you scoop water into this. Your filtration system is in the bottom. You basically press this down, and as the water goes through, it's now in the container inside. It's been filtered and you can drink. That just eliminates the need to have to boil water or treat water with iodine tabs. These are not super cheap, but it's a once in a lifetime investment that I think you'll be really happy with. If you don't have the money to do it, don't worry. Get a single wall container that you can put in your survival kit, and then grab a Life Straw or a Sawyer filter for between 20 and 30 bucks. Those are great options as well. The thing I like about both the Life Straw and the Sawyer filter is that you basically put it directly in the water and you can consume the water. It's a little bit harder to get the water out to put in a container, but you don't have to worry about getting water, then treating it, then drinking it. Not to mention, if you ever boil water and you're in a survival situation and you have to wait for water to cool down to drink it, it's not a lot of fun. Yes, you can drink hot water, but it is absolutely not refreshing in a survival situation. So Grail makes a great option for filtering and carrying your water, and then check out Life Straw and Sawyer as well. Fire is a great tool to have in a survival situation, both to create light and heat, certainly, and also you can signal with it and you can actually create other tools with it as well. So I always have a striker and a fire steel in my survival kit. Now somebody might say, well, what about a Bic lighter? That's great. I'll show you. I keep one of those as well in my survival kit. The thing that's great about a fire steel is that if it gets wet, you literally drop it in the snow or water, take it out, wipe it off, and then boom, you can use it again. So that's what I really like about this. You can still get a Bic lighter that's gotten wet to work, but it's just a lot more work. The disadvantage of this is that it doesn't create a direct flame. So this has to hit something that is going to catch fire and then burn for you, which I have here, but that can make it a little bit more work. But if you're comfortable with a fire steel, it's a great tool to have in your fire kit. Now, in addition to the fire steel, I've got a fire kit here. So we've got a Ranger band on the outside that can actually catch fire really nicely and burn for a while. This is from Fiberlight, and inside what they have is a fire steel and whistle, and I keep it inside this plastic just so that it doesn't get wet at all. And then you have this fiber here, this fibrous material that's infused with all kinds of accelerants, so when you hit that with a spark, it'll burn nicely. And the whole kit is nicely contained here. And again, I've got now 2 fire steels, and I've got a way to get the fire started with the accelerant of that material. Now, additionally for cordage, I carry a spool tool. So this keeps my paracord organized. I've chosen 550 cord. It's very strong, very commonly used for survival situations or survival training. It does have the internal strands, so you can use that cordage as well. I've got bright orange because that'll just get more attention. Also, if I drop it, it's easier to relocate it as opposed to if it's black or green. And then right here, you can see it's got a spot for a Bic lighter. So now I've got a fire steel inside the kit, and a Bic lighter, multiple ways to start fire, huge deal for me. Where I live in New Hampshire, in New England, it gets cold for a good portion of the year, so staying warm is a huge deal for me when it comes to creating a microclimate, and fire is the best way to do that. And I'm gonna give you a little hint here. If you ever get stuck in a survival situation, make a big fire. I'm always shocked when I see people on survival shows and things, and they make these little dinky fires and then they have to huddle around them. It's not bad for, like, you know, if you're just trying to get a little bit of warmth, but if you're cold, make a big fire. Don't burn down the forest, but make a big fire so you can stay warm and you don't have to stress out about running to get more wood all the time. All right, so we've got fire covered, we've got some tools covered, we've got cordage covered. Let's keep going. Another thing you want is a way to keep the elements off you and also set up a home base. And so I recommend 2 of these emergency blankets. This one is from SOL. It's a little bit more durable than the average one you get. The advantage of having 2 is you can have one for your covering, basically a roof for your shelter, and then you can wrap one around you. You can put it on this other one on the ground, and it can keep the cold from just quickly getting absorbed into your body, or even if it's cold outside. I've seen a 30-degree difference when I tested the temperature, like close to my body versus outside temperature when I wrap this around me. This is a great way to stay warm at a very low cost. These are a couple bucks. These are a little bit more expensive, but super lightweight. And you can see, slip these into a pack or survival kit. Not going to take up a ton of space. This also has the advantage of being orange, so it can catch somebody's eye. If you want to get a tarp, that's great. It's just that they're going to be heavier. And again, if it's too heavy, you bring it home, leave it home. You're not going to have it with you in a survival situation. But if you're going to buy one or pack one, pack 2. You could even throw an extra one in there. So one to cover you, one for the ground, and then one to wrap around. Lightweight, great tools, and now you have something to keep the weather off you. One thing I see people talk about in survival situations is, you know, building the ultimate shelter, building the ultimate camp, or starting to make tools or containers. That's all fine if you need to, but the goal in a survival situation is to get out of Dodge. It's to get back home, right? And so pack a whistle. This is a very lightweight whistle from the company called Vargo, V-A-R-G-O. You can get a variety of different emergency whistles. When you buy one, test it to make sure it works well. And this one is lightweight. I think it's actually titanium. I've got a piece of cordage on it so I can keep it around my neck. And this thing makes a lot of noise. And signaling in the woods will help get somebody's attention. If they're like, hey, we heard something. Is that person okay? What's that noise over there? And you can do a variety of different signals. You can do SOS, dit, 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 da, 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 dit, dit, dit. And then also just do random sounds. Don't just go whistle and then stop for 20 minutes. So if somebody hears it, they go, that's not a bird. That's somebody who's trying to get attention, right? So make it obvious that you're trying to get help, and don't just think, I'll yell and get somebody's attention. This thing will make getting attention easier, and your voice won't wear out. In a survival situation, a simple scratch or cut can go downhill quickly because now you can't use your hands as much, and now you're trying to do something with one hand. So I always recommend just a basic pair of gloves. These are mechanics gloves. You can get them for 20 or 30 bucks at Lowe's, Home Depot, places like that. But throw these in a kit. They will add some warmth to your hands, and also as you're doing things around camp, you won't have as much of a chance of hurting yourself. So simple item to add. You can see these are definitely worn. I've used them quite a bit, but I think a great investment for a survival kit. Now, if you get into a survival situation, one of the first things you want to do is to assess yourself. Do you have any injuries, any cuts, scrapes? Are you bleeding? That type of stuff. And so here are 3 basic things I recommend on the medical side of things that you bring with you. So bring a basic medical kit. Now, this is very consolidated, but you got some bandages in there. We got things like alcohol wipes to clean myself off so that if I'm going to be out for maybe a couple days, I'm not getting some nasty infection. And even if you have a cut, just covering it up makes you feel better when that happens. The second thing is a tiny first aid survival guide. You can pick these up on Amazon. My buddy David from Ultimate Survival Tips created these, and a great little tool to understand how to take care of yourself on a very basic level. And then I highly recommend that people keep a tourniquet in their kit. Obviously, if you're in a tourniquet type of situation, it's pretty bad, but better to have this and to be able to use it as opposed to not having it and trying to jerry-rig something with, some paracord or something like that. So basic first aid kit, this tiny first aid survival guide, and then a tourniquet. Those are 3 first aid items I highly recommend for survival kits. Undoubtedly, something you should have in your survival kit is a headlamp. I also recommend extra batteries for your headlamp. So this takes 3 AAAs, which are in there already, and I would say you should have an additional 3 AAAs with you. This one's from Princeton Tech. It's the Remix. Hands-free is a great option when you're having to use a light. So immediately if you're holding the flashlight with this hand and then you got to do something with the other hand, you're down 50% functionality. With a headlamp, you can just use both hands. You can operate at night. You can walk. You can get around camp. One of my little hints would be try to use the lowest setting you can as long as you can stay safe, right? If you're just pouring out tons of light because it makes you feel a little bit better, maybe build up your fire a little bit more. But with the lowest setting, you're going to get the most burn time for your headlamp, which is great. And again, hands-free, great. Princeton Tech, great option. I also like some headlamps from Phoenix and Olight and ThruNite. They make some decent ones. So those are some options out there. I think if you're going to buy a simple small one like this, Princeton Tech is probably the best company you can go with. A couple more little tools you can add to your survival kit. Have a good compass. This is from Sokoa. It's a little bit smaller than your average compass that most people think about for orienteering, but at least you have something. It can give you a general orientation of where you are. And you may think, well, I don't have a map. I don't know north, south, east, west, but you can start to put some pieces together over time and go, okay, I was here for this long. I know that this river runs north to south. I just bumped into it. Okay, now I can figure out a direction of travel. So lightweight, small item. I would definitely recommend you have one of these in your survival kit. Another thing is a roll of duct tape. This is bright red. You can use this for a ton of different things. Obviously repairing gear. You can use it for making shelters. You can also use it for bandaging up cuts or making some sort of tools. Even if you had to sort of jerry rig a sling or something, you could find a way to do it with some duct tape. I want to give you a little hint, which is that you can see, this is where you would get the edge of it, and it's this wide. You can rip half the duct tape in half vertically or horizontally, I guess I should say, so that you don't use a piece this wide, you just use a piece this wide, and that'll conserve a bunch of duct tape for you. You don't have to use the entire size of the tape every time you're using it. So bright red, obviously good to catch somebody's eye. If you're leaving your camp, sometimes what you can do is, I've done this with orange duct tape, put a couple little just small flags of duct tape around my camp so that when I come back, I'm like, oh, there it is, because I can see the duct tape like moving in the breeze that I put on the trees. So another great option to have. This is underrated big time, especially for where I live. Having some bug spray. You can get a tiny little thing of this for like $2 or $3. Put it in your survival kit, and then if bugs start getting in your face and they're biting you, getting in your ears and stuff, it could just be so overwhelming mentally. So have this with you to keep the bugs away. It's not going to be a long-term solution to your survival, but it's going to make the moments that you're in a tough situation easier. What we've got here is a little kit from OST. We've got a fire steel, we've got a tool, and then we've got a sharpening rod. I'm not overly concerned about sharpening, an axe or a knife in the woods, but if it got dull, you could sharpen it up. You can also use this to strike a fire steel if you have a sharpening rod that's got enough friction, it's not too fine. And then obviously I've got another fire steeler, so that's another way to start a fire. And you can see when I put this thing all together and put the cap on, it's a tiny, tiny little kit that you can throw into your survival kit. Gives you a couple more options to help affect survival. Just because you're around water doesn't guarantee you're going to catch fish, but might as well have a small fishing kit. And so look, I've got a tiny little fishing kit in this bag. You can make a really small one with some small hooks, a little bit of line. You could throw a fly in there, some weights in there like I have in this, but nice to have a little fishing kit. So if you are out for a while, maybe you can try to catch some fish. I highly recommend this tiny survival guide. Again, same company as the tiny first aid guide, but this thing has got tons of information, not just about, how to make traps and shelters, but also things that you may not intuitively think of in a survival situation. And then when you read it, you're like, okay, yeah, that would actually make my life easier or help me get rescued sooner. So having something like this can get you thinking about survival in a different way. And it's always good to have a bandana of some sort. And this one that I have is from Wazoo Survival Gear. And it's got tons of information about medicinal and edible plants. So you got to be really careful when you're trying to eat some sort of plant that you're not totally familiar with. But this moves you in the right direction. Make sure you can properly identify it before you eat it. But now I've got this, which I can use for medical purposes. I could use when I'm starting to filter some water, or if I had to do something like that. And also it's multi-use because now I can identify some plants that I might be able to use. So if you're gonna have an item, multi-use is great. Wazoo Survival Gear makes really cool bandanas for that purpose. Here's an item I forgot to mention when I was first recording the video, just a little piece of tubing. Certainly you can use this to make a slingshot or something like that. But also if you have to access some sort of water and it's in an awkward place, a little piece of tubing with that hole down the middle allows you to get to some water. And the other one is a mirror, so you can signal people. If you see somebody and it's sunny outside, you can get their attention. And even if you can't get to them, maybe they can see this reflection. They can come help you out. And make sure you put some sort of food in your kit as well. I find these types of bars are very durable, so they're not going to break into 100 different pieces, and they'll last in your kit for a while. Little bonus tip here, you can actually find shoelaces that are 550 cord, but inside they've got different strands of material, like something that's really flammable, something that's like Kevlar cordage, just a little something extra. If you put these in your shoes or your boots that you're bringing out into the woods or wherever you're going, you've got another little tool with you. Now, let's talk about taking care of our minds and our souls when we're out there. So definitely want to recommend that you take a identification card. So this is a card that I got from Tops. On the back, it's got my name, my information, blood type, allergies, medicine, who should you contact info. Fill one of these out, just write it on an index card, cover it in clear tape, even just like packing tape, and stick it in your bag. So if you get injured and say you're unconscious and somebody finds it, then they can help you, like, oh, this person needs, this is who I need to contact, this is their medical situation. The other two things to keep in mind is how you're taking care of your soul, how you're keeping yourself calm. I've got a couple videos that I'll put links to at the end of this video about even just some very helpful techniques to keep your psychology in the right place in a survival situation. Additionally, I got a picture of my family. And so if I'm in a survival situation and I'm like, boom, I'm gonna keep fighting because I love these guys and I wanna see these guys again. On the back, I've got some Bible verses that will help encourage my soul, and I've got a pocket New Testament that I can keep in my kit. Remember that the battle for survival, yes, it's about our bodies, but it's also about our minds, our souls, our emotions. We are complete human beings, and so we got to think about survival across the spectrum when we're doing our best to stay alive. And here's a look at the kit when it's all put inside the bag. I mentioned another video that kind of offers you some techniques for staying focused and centered while you're in a survival situation. I'll put a link to that here, as well as if you're like, yeah, I've got the tarp in my bag or the emergency blanket in my bag, but how do I make a shelter? Here's a video on how to make emergency shelter. So what would you add? What would you take away? Let's hear your thoughts on this survival kit. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon.